Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 194 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. You can try StrengthCoach.com out for 3 days for just $1. And if you have a staff of 2 or more and you want to sign up as a group, we have a special membership offer for you, up to 50% off depending on how many people you got. Check it out at StrengthCoach.com. All right, I'm your host, Anthony Renna, and the show notes are located at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. Want to get in touch with me, shoot me an email to StrengthCoachPodcast@gmail.com. All right, today on the Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about a forum thread called Single Leg Hang Cleans that started from a Twitter thread, Dan McGinley's article Trust the System, and another great forum thread started by Chris Martinez called Are We Meant to Pull Heavy? Lots of discussion on that one. That and much more coming up on the Coach's Corner in a little while. Aaron McGurr from Perform Better joins us to talk about the extended summer sale, which ends really soon, and a new recovery tool called the Theragun. For the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment, Rachel Cosgrove is on to talk about working as a couple, building a business with a spouse. Alistair McCaw is back to continue his series on 7 keys to being a great coach. Today in part 6, he talks about the fundamentals. For the Functional Movement System segment, Diane Vivas is on to talk about using the FMS as your secret weapon to modifying your circuit training. Part 2 is on how to actually modify a circuit within a training session. And for the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach, I have on Brian Bradley, Vice President of Agascu. I spoke to Brian about what is the Agascu method? Can we really make lasting change with just changing posture? What he looks for in assessing posture, common things he sees, the patch, and so much more coming up from Coach Bradley in a little while. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. Coach, how you doing?
Well, I was magical last week because I was in Disney. Now I'm back in lovely Woburn, Massachusetts, so I am doing just fine.
Nice. You know, we're not going to talk about it on this episode, but you just sent me some book notes from that. Were you reading a Disney book in Disney?
No, I wasn't reading a Disney book in Disney, but I was reading, interestingly enough, I've read 2 Disney books since Creating Magic. And that was it ended up, I guess for staff, it ended up being our summer reading because it was our last book of the year in the spring. And we didn't really get to cover it. We actually just covered it in our staff meeting today. And I sent the notes to you in terms of my kind of 20 takeaways from Lessons from the Mouse. And I think we talked about this before in a podcast, maybe about that time before the summer, in that I was focusing on trying to find some good customer service books because I think that's one of the things that we need to be consistently discussing as a staff, as a business, is just this whole idea of customer service. And there was just some cool stuff. I think people that are on the site will enjoy the article, and maybe some of them will pick up the book because there's just some great stuff in there that I think the good thing, and this is one of the first things that comes up in the Disney thing, you said we weren't going to talk about it, but we are, sorry, is that the one thing, Walt Disney just wanted to create a place he could take his kids that wasn't like a skeevy carnival. and it became this thing that is now Disney, that is the Disney way, that is this kind of customer service poster child.
Yeah,
so
standard.
it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, standard. There you go.
Yeah, that was definitely some good stuff that you were writing. So we'll talk about some of the points next time. But Coach, last time we left off, you guys had a great Twitter feed discussion on the single leg hang cleans. But Elspeth asked a question, and I kind of had a few. I have the same thoughts as Elspeth. Like watching Jamie do some of them, and Jamie's a good athlete, really strong guy. The girls, they looked fine doing them. Obviously, that was the U.S. women's hockey team. And Elspeth had asked if you had any incidents, any coordination issues, loss of balance. I guess because, like, looking at them, you could definitely see, when you're always talking about risk reward, there might be some issues there with some people. So have you had any issues? Was there anything just kind of doing that you thought of, wow, we got to be careful with this? And maybe some of the people we're not going to do them with. And are you still using the two-legged version, or is it a complete changeover like the single leg rear foot elevated split squat?
No, really, this is just a game, a toy, something fun to do. So, and it's for the athletes. It's not, and I said that today actually on the forum. I don't know if you've looked that far into the thread yet, but we don't Olympic lift. We don't double leg Olympic lift with our adults. When we're talking about loaded explosive training, we might jump squat with a vest, we'll kettlebell swing. We do not have our adults Olympic lifting. So, and even with some of our kids, we're not even going to think about a single leg clean. So we've got a really good double leg clean. And I think that's the difference for the hockey girls, is that we can do something that's kind of fun and different and challenges their balance, but also, and I finally finished my bilateral deficit article, and I'm going to send it to you. We can do some things that take advantage of this bilateral deficit idea and actually have us training lighter and faster, but in effect using higher loads. So when you looked at those girls and realized they were in the 65, 75 that day because it was the first time we'd done them in a really long time. But we had girls who were popping 100 pounds around with no problem. And there's none of them that can clean 200 pounds for reps, but they'll throw 100 pounds around for 5. Yeah. So I guess there's just, as with everything, I think we talk about the same things over and over again, but it's about choosing tools. It's about choosing the right tool for the job. It's about knowing your audience, all the things that if you've been reading my books and watching the whatever, FSC DVDs and all this stuff, we've said these things over and over again, and they bear repeating. Know your audience, right? Absolutely. Choose the right tool for the job, all that stuff. And don't just look at something and think, oh, that's cool, I'm going to go do that. And in some ways, that might have been, I might have lit a little fire there, but I think we do want to stimulate. We ended up getting a really good article idea out of that. The funny thing is, Anthony Brett said, gee, can you make that into an article for us? I said, yeah, I don't know how to do it, though. And he literally sent me a Twitter feed that said cut and paste. I was like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah, I wrote it. Mike, I wrote
after you. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. He said the same thing then, because he was initially the one that had prompted me. And you cut and pasted, put it together, and then I just went and filled in the blanks, because the thing that stinks about Twitter is when you're writing in 140 characters, you're leaving things out and you're abbreviating things. So I just went in after you cut and pasted it and sort of tried to make sure it was a little bit better spelled out so someone could read it. Then I read it and thought, wow, this was really good.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's funny how those things, we keep talking about the organic growth of the site. And I think that's a perfectly good example of the organic growth of the site, because I don't think anybody intended that to become an article. It was just more, and I don't know whether it was Devin or Jamie who first chimed in and asked a question about it, but it prompted this thread that, and I think there's another one I have to actually look. We were kind of looking at, talking about ACLs on Twitter the other day, the number of ACLs that have happened in the NFL, and that's something that also,
yeah,
I believe, between the ACLs and the hamstring pulls, it really indicates that there's some things going on from a training perspective in the NFL that aren't great.
Yeah, well, that was Jamie who started that thread, and then Anthony had asked, Coach, can you put it up there? And then when you said, yeah, if I can figure it out, and then I was being a wise ass, and I just said, yeah, copy. It's called copy and paste.
I was thinking, he's Anthony too. I thought that was him. I never even noticed that was you.
I shouldn't have said anything. Damn.
I know, because he would have got credit for being a wise ass. I was like, Jesus, you kind of punked me on that one. That's not good.
Coach, this was a good segue into Trust the System, which was written by one of your coaches, Dan McGinley, who's in China working with the Chinese Olympic team. Is it one of them?
Yes, it's one of their regional Olympic training
Okay,
centers.
and he wrote a great article about his time there right now, and he had said basically that the MBSC system is based on progressions and regressions, and that there was a Chinese coach that he was explaining this to, and they felt that the system, although they had liked it, they felt that it could be boring, and that they were worried that they would lose athletes' attention. And his response was that it has to do more with the culture that we create than the exercise selection. I thought this was great because he's in China at this facility that's like super disciplined, and he came up with some really creative ideas. Like, and it's going to sound stupid to the average person if you don't take it in context, but letting the athletes choose the music that gets played. Team breakdowns, which he always hated after each training session, and then like making up handshakes with the players. I just thought this was great about the fact that he used some creativity to really focus on, and he didn't waver, and he's trusted the system. Talk to us about, this idea at MBSC, because look, I mean, I don't care that you're not, we're not in a such a disciplined system, but you're still going to have to deal with the same things and people getting bored. And then we always go back to some of this culture idea, but talk to us about how you guys think of this at MBSC in Boston, because it's not China.
Well, I think for us, I always say we get a free pass because everybody expects to just do what we tell them to do. So we don't have to worry nearly as much about this maybe as other people do. And so I think it's interesting when someone like Dan, when you realize, wow, I'm going someplace else and now I've got to deal with sport coaches and I've got to deal with other strength and conditioning coaches and people that are concerned about, like he was saying, the guy wants to do exercise on the Bosu ball because the athletes will think it's cool. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to post it, and I'm hoping I actually should make a point of telling everybody in the staff to read it, but it's very similar to Brendan. Remember when Brendan went on the podcast and talked about, I don't know whether it was with you or with Kevin Larrabee or both, but he talked about understanding the reason why we do what we do. Because when he went to California, he started not doing it.
Yeah.
And then very quickly, he screwed some people up. He had some things go wrong, and he realized, oh, wow. And I guess that's, when you talk about trust the system, that's the idea, is that we don't do anything that hasn't really been thought about in great, great detail and experimented on in great, great detail. And so, yeah, you do have to kind of trust the system and realize that we've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that this stuff is foolproof, that this is as good as it can be. And as good as it can be doesn't necessarily mean as interesting as it can be, or as entertaining as it can be, or as much fun as it can be. And the cool thing is, Dan obviously talked about ways to kind of spice up the other side of that a little bit, so that you don't, not that you don't have that problem, but so that you have less of that problem. Because I think so much of what we've been successful with is making people believe that what we're doing is really good, and making people believe that this is the best programming out there. And when you do that, people line up and they do what you want them to do, because they believe.
Yeah.
Versus when you might look at it and think, oh, here's a kind of a totally different situation where you're looking at it and thinking, oh, I don't know. Are these people really experts? Do these people really know what they're doing? And I think, as I said, we're lucky in the sense that we've got 20 years of credibility under our belt.
Yeah, good stuff. That was definitely, and I remember when Brendan was on here, and he might have done it on the Fitcast as well, but he was talking about, oh boy, I was like, Mike, whatever, and then he was trying some different training too when he was out there, and then he did say, yeah, well, Mike was right again.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Well, he tried back squats with clients, and, even himself, he went and he did some different classes. Yeah. And in some ways, I look at that and think that's great, because the bad thing about Mike Boyle strength and conditioning is that it is its own little world. And that's both a huge positive and a little bit of a negative in the sense that everybody that's there doesn't know any better. They know what they know from being kind of where they are. So,
well, unless you get guys, again, the super trainers come in, Brandon Rierick, Kevin Carr, Marco Sanchez, Anatako, people that so many of you guys that just keep going outside, going to continuing education and bringing it back and saying, Mike, look what we learned. That's what's got to keep. And they try to, and they talk to me about, this is how you convince Mike Boyle. You don't do it this way. You have to do it this way. And you have to show him this way. So they even learned, they learned how to ease something into the MBSC and even to get it, to bring it to you. They learned when to bring it to you and how to bring it to you. So I thought that was interesting. But, those are the leaders in our industry. That's how, it's a good, and I think that Disney article we'll talk about, that we're not going to talk about, talked a little bit about that too, about looking at, your job at, being a leader and looking at your job as saying, whatever I do, I'm going to be the best at it. And I'm going to look and I'm preparing for another job eventually, even if it's a crappy job. But being a leader is, that's part of being a leader. And I think they certainly did a great job with that. Coach, great thread. We put it on the newsletter yesterday because it was the main topic in the newsletter. Are we meant to pull heavy? Chris Martinez brought up a great point. We always preach having a balanced program of push-to-pull exercises, but he had said, are our upper body pulling muscles made to handle as much load as pushing muscles? Think about all the push-pull splits. There's always more load in the bench press, shoulder press, push jerks than there is in chin-ups, pull-ups, rows, and lat pull-downs. And it started a lot of great discussion. It doubled the number of responses after the newsletter because it's such a great, like you always talk about, does it make you think? And it made a lot of people think. Talk to us about this idea, are we meant to pull heavy?
Yeah, I thought it was a reasonably good question, to be honest. And I don't know if I agreed with the original thought process, but what I thought was more interesting was, and I think it was Barry Masterman who talked about the idea that we were meant to push hard and fast, and we were meant to pull and hold on longer. And it's like, wow, that's an interesting sort of evolutionary take on this idea that if we were sort of in a conflict situation, we might need to push something away, but we might need to climb a tree and hold on to it for a really long time. And then we get into sort of the idea of evolution and, okay, did we in fact walk on all fours? And I'm always a big believer in the pecs are a muscle that we're losing from an evolutionary standpoint because we don't need them. Because we don't do that stuff. We don't crawl. We don't do a lot of these things anymore. And so as a result, they're very responsive to training because they've been sort of sitting dormant for a long time. And so then you get into, I was thinking, they posted today about brachiation. Are we more meant to grip and hold and swing than we are to pull? Is that maybe more why people don't pull well? Because if someone, if we were swinging through trees, we weren't going chin up to chin up. We were hanging on and swinging and brachiating from place to place. So there's just a lot of, I don't know, I'm trying to think, I guess a lot of interesting thought process that we can explore. And I think, as I keep saying the same things over and over again, but that's the really cool thing about the site is that someone can throw up what might be a simple question or something that you don't agree with, and then you can read 10 really good, smart people's thoughts about that particular point and then form your own conclusion.
Yeah, that might have to go on the best of already because there's some really good responses, and it is a really, it does make you think, and as it should. So, good stuff. All right, Coach, we're gonna let you go. Thanks for coming on, and we will talk to you next time.
Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, now it's time for the Ask the Equipment Experts fresh off the big photo shoots. Erin McGurr. Erin, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, photo shoots are for the big catalog, right?
Yeah, I'm exhausted. We had 6 days of it, which is a lot of photos and a lot of shooting. So I get ugly by the end of it. It's not pretty, but I survived it.
Nice. Well, right now we've been talking about the summer sale, and we're recording this on the 30th, and it was supposed to end today. But good news, you're not ending it today. You're extending the summer sale. Nice.
Just a couple days, so not a lot. We are going to keep it through the weekend, and we are probably going to keep it throughout next week as well, so the first week in October. But more than likely it will end next Friday. So we also threw in some free shipping for some items that are on the sale. So not too many, but there are some last-minute things that you can get free shipping with as well as the sale price. So definitely take a look this weekend if you're hanging out and take full advantage of it.
All right, very cool. You got a new product on there. It is on the website. It's been on it for a little bit, but you guys haven't really promoted it too much. Tell us about it.
Well, it's called the Theragun, and we did have it out at the Long Beach Summit, so whoever was out at Long Beach, I'm sure they probably saw it. It is similar to the deep muscle stimulator, so I don't know if anyone has used the DMS or seen it or tried it or heard it. It feels amazing. One of the biggest differences is the new Theragun, besides price, because it is probably a fourth of the price, if actually a little more than, or a little less than a fourth. So the price is a huge difference. Another big difference is that the Theragun, you don't have to plug it in. So it does run on batteries. It comes with a charger, so it's a 12 volt lithium ion battery. So it is powerful. You can recharge it. You don't have to, keep plugging it in somewhere. So it's great to take outside, great to take on the road. But it's also light enough. It only weighs a little over 2 pounds. So I know the DMS, if anyone's used it, after a couple minutes, it gets heavy and it's hard to use sometimes. This one's super easy because it's super light. So you can use it on yourself, use it on other people. But it does have 6 different angles that you can change. So instead of just kind of massaging one area, you can change the angle of it, get to different parts of the body that way that just make it a little easier. And it also comes with 2 different attachments. So one of the attachments is a little ball, and the other attachment is a little point. So if you want to dig in a little deeper. And what it does is really you just hold the button like a gun, does a jackhammer motion and digs in. So obviously same thing that a lot of people use for vibration, but increasing blood flow, decreasing lactic acid, helps with pain a little bit. So it's pretty cool. Like I said, again, the price is a huge, huge difference. The weight of it, I love the fact that it's portable and you can really take it anywhere. So it's been great. I know we did have it up at the photo shoot, so it was nice because our photographer actually liked it because he would stand there and use it in between the shots. So
nice. On his right pinky, on his right index finger?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, again, it's one of the new products we'll be featuring in the catalog, but it is up on the website because we did have it out at the summit in Long Beach this year. So for anyone that's looking for, something a little different, doesn't have it in the budget to get a DMS and wants something a little easier to travel around with, it does do a lot of the same things. So it's pretty cool, and I would definitely check it out.
All right, very cool. You guys just keep increasing the methods for recovery. So obviously very important. So very cool. E, thanks so much for coming on today talking about the extension of the summer sale and the new Theragun. So you're the best. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Functional Movement System segment. My name is Diane Vivas. In part 1 of using FMS to modify your circuit, I spoke about how to apply strategies in designing pre-session work as well as a focused movement preparation. For part 2, I want to share an example of how to modify a circuit within the training session using FMS. If we look at the opportunity that FMS creates by identifying a weak link pattern, and then we create an effective pre-session work and movement prep, it introduces a person or a group into the training session already having had a positive mobility response and some basic motor control. Then we can take those individual or groups into the training session or the circuit training already having the advantage of those positive gains, and we can apply further motor control strategies that'll help facilitate and challenge those movement patterns. We want to make sure that we're taking them as far down the corrective path as possible each session. Now, we use the example of really practicing the thought process when we're talking through to our training staffs, and even in our new level 2 course, we have a case study session. We want to create the right mindset. So when we're creating circuits, the first thing we do is assume that we have all green lights and no limitations. Now, a lot of times if we're working one-on-one, we have the advantages of creating an ideal corrective path and really working with somebody, making changes as you see progress. That's a little bit harder to do with small groups and groups. So if we're designing a circuit for a small group or group, we happen to use the Smart Set system. So it helps us design a circuit based on the 4 pillars of human movement, which is level changes, which is that lower body push and pull. The second station would be an upper body push or pull. Third would be rotary stability or rotation. And then the fourth would be a biomotor skill or maybe some just basic support balance work, depending on the level of the individual or the group that you're working with. We then take knowing somebody's FMS scores, and now we can prepare to make adjustments within the circuit. Now, let's use the example of somebody coming in that maybe we've identified as the active straight leg raise being the weak link. Maybe they scored 1s in the movement screen on active straight leg raise. The first thing we're going to do is be very conscious of protecting them. We're going to make sure that we back off loading, deadlift variations, Olympic lifts, anything that's going to require that efficient hip hinge. They simply don't have the prerequisite movement to be effective there, and we want to make sure they don't injure themselves. And instead of just unloading it and backing off the movement that way, we can actually substitute a different movement, a corrective exercise that can really help them make progress, not just avoid the movement. And so something like that would, knowing that they've already hopefully made some positive changes in mobility coming into the circuit session itself, we can hopefully take them a little bit further down the path by focusing on maybe some static motor control. We want to make sure that we take that reciprocal position, maybe in a half kneeling posture, and make sure they have the ability to level out the pelvis. This is something that with that new range of motion they've achieved, making that positive gain, we want to make sure they can then apply that to posture through that stability movement. So something like that might look like a half kneeling position and then challenging it with an upper body movement such as a halo, maybe using a kettlebell or some type of weight, and using that dynamic upper body to challenge the static motor control of that lower body posture and that pelvic motor control. So when we think about inserting something that could have positive gains like that, that's an ideal way to modify the circuit. Now we're always going to be able to look at those other movements in the other stations that have green lights, and we're still going to be able to provide intensity, progress. They're going to be able to work towards their training goals. We're just going to be really smart and efficient by making sure we are also paying attention to the corrective path that they need to be going down, making their movement better as well as their conditioning. So we give a lot of examples like this in our new level 2-day course. So come out and see us there if you can. If you're already level 2 have already attended a level 2, just realize you can re-attend for like $99, get the CEUs, the updates, the new content. It's a killer deal. So come out and see us. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to share ideas on how to use the FMS to modify your circuit, and take care.
Hey, it's Rachel Cosgrove with the Business of Fitness segment with Results Fitness University. And I wanted to talk a little bit about working as a couple. This is a question Alan and I get so much, and it's great to hear. We get, a number of couples that come up to us at Perform Better or, at events that we're at and ask, how do you guys do it? What's the secret? And so I just wanted to share some of what's worked for us. We've now owned our business together for going on 17 years. And, for us, yes, working as a couple does work. And it's something that, we only know. We actually met working together. But there are some things that we have, found to work that I hope will help some of the couples out there that are, getting into business together. And it's not for everybody. So that's the first thing I would say is, don't feel like you're a failure if you can't work together, because it's not for everybody. It's definitely, I have seen couples that it works for, and I have seen couples that it doesn't work for. So it's okay if it doesn't work for you, but if you do decide to get into business together with your significant other, here's some tips for you on that. Number one, you think of it as two different relationships. Your relationship as business partners and your relationship as husband or wife or boyfriend and girlfriend is two different relationships, and they both need to be nurtured as such. So, you can't really mix. You have to be careful of mixing the two. And I know this can be hard, especially when you're first opening your gym, when everything is about the gym. I know, for us, we're passionate about what we do. We love what we do. And so, when we go home, we want to talk about it, and we want to, you want to brainstorm about it. And I get that. One of the things I would say to just starting to set that boundary off, would be, when you are at work, you're at work, and when you're at home, you're at home. And at home, start to think about maybe, first, the first step would be that all the conversation has to be positive. So that way, at least, if you are talking about work, you're only talking about positive stuff. You're talking about something awesome that happened with a client that day. You're talking about, maybe, how great something is. And that way the conversation doesn't end up, turning into, talking about the problems or the issues, or, because then you basically have changed, whether it's your date night or even just your relaxing evening at home into, basically a, rant about what's going on at the gym and what's not working. So that would be step one. Eventually you want to get to the point where, you can go on a date or you can hang out at home and not talk about work, not talk about the gym. And I do realize, for a lot of us, it doesn't feel like work because it's, we love it. We love what we do, but it is still, you still have to have that break in order to bring 100% to your business, and in order to, walk into your company and really, as the leaders, bring what you need to bring. You do have to have that downtime. You do have to have that break away from it. And so when you are in it together as a couple, really strategizing and setting those boundaries that, you have those conversations, at work. And we've even, throughout the day, if there's something we still needed to discuss and, we were done with our day at the gym, we would end up on our cell phones in the driveway finishing the conversation, so that, we could go into the house and no longer and be done, once we went into the house. And so things like that, just finding ways that you can go ahead and, create those boundaries. The other thing is just making sure you each have your own roles. So, and this is for any business partnership, making sure that if one person's in charge of maybe program design, like Alan was, and the other person's in charge of marketing, like I was, then, they each do their roles in the company, and you don't try to micromanage each other, because that's where it can get ugly. So, each person doing what they're best at, finding your sweet spot within your company, and, and really sticking to that and doing those jobs and not getting into the middle of each other's, business. And I would say the third thing that's the most important is that you both have the same vision for the company. And so whether you're business partners, whether you're a couple or not, that's what's most important in a business partnership is before you open that business, really, having that conversation of where are we going? What are we doing? And really always, always, always remember that your business should support your life. And that's why we set up our businesses, is to support us in our life. And yes, we do it because we want to change lives and we want to help people, but we can help a whole lot more people if our life is being supported. So, it's kind of the whole, you always put your oxygen mask on first before putting your oxygen mask on to your kids or to everybody else, because you got to take care of you first. So if your business is not supporting you, that's number one. And so as a couple, really figuring out, what does that mean? What does that mean for our business to support us? What do we need? How much money do we need every month? How much money do we want to save? What's our goal, personally, that's separate from the business? What do we want this business to create for us as a couple for the long term? And so as you do that, as you set those boundaries, as you, also think about, looking for that common vision and what are you creating? In the long run, you'll build a long-term, company together. And I will say one of the most, rewarding things is to be able to build, a company together as a couple and change the lives that you can change and really see the impact that you're making together. And so those of you who are couples in this industry, I encourage you to really have those conversations early and, really set those boundaries and just, keep your relationship a priority and keep it a priority, separate from your business. And, together you can really make a huge impact on this industry and really enjoy the relationship of being both business partners and partners in life. So I hope that gives everybody some ideas as they are, dealing with that. I know we get a lot of questions on that. And so it's something that is a topic that I think, more and more it's exciting to see so many people opening businesses and gyms together. And I just want to see them all succeed. So hopefully that gives you some help. So thanks for tuning in to the Business of Fitness segment with Results Fitness University. Check out resultsfitnessuniversity.com. And thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in.
Hi again, Alistair McCaw here, and as always, great to be back with you on the Strength Coach podcast. Over the last 5 episodes here on this segment, we've been able to cover chapters 1 to 5 of my new book, The 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach. That means we just have 2 chapters remaining. So, to refresh your memory, here's a quick summary of what we've looked at so far. In Chapter 1, we spoke about the importance of setting your standards. In Chapter 2, we looked at building your method or philosophy. In Chapter 3, we looked at your ability to adapt as a coach. In Chapter 4, we spoke about the importance of having a great energy. And in Chapter 5, we looked at how important it is to have great interpersonal skills as a coach. So today, we get to look at Chapter 6, the fundamentals. Something I've always found when I talk about the importance of the fundamentals at a workshop or coaches talk is that there seems to be an attention drop in the interest of what I'm saying. In fact, even the word itself, fundamentals, doesn't really correlate with its first 3 letters, fun. It seems that the fundamentals have a reputation for being dull, boring, and somewhat tedious. Well, truth be told, the fundamentals aren't exactly exciting or have you sitting on the edge of your seat, but one thing for sure is that they're a necessity in mastering any skill and producing world-class results. Having spent a good part of my career observing and working alongside some great coaches, I've discovered that they all have been great teachers and endorsers of the fundamentals. They all seem to have a deeper relationship, understanding, and respect for the fundamentals of the game or the skills they're coaching. Something I find in today's world is that a lot of coaches have difficulty sticking to them. Personally, I think there's a few reasons for this. First, I believe a lack of patience is a big reason, especially in a world where we live with instant gratification and a results now mindset. It seems that everyone is in a rush to produce the next Jordan Spieth, Stephen Curry, or Michael Phelps, but are not willing to lay the proper foundations and have the discipline needed to learn, apply, and stick to those. We need to respect that it takes many years to develop a world-class athlete. There are so many distractions now that we're living in an internet world, where so much information is available at the click of a button. These days, I find that so many coaches are just constantly looking for the next best fad, drill, exercise, or program, and in the process, forgetting what really matters most, and that's sticking to the basics and fundamentals. A few years back, I attended a U.S. national badminton training camp in Orlando, Florida. What struck me was the attention to detail and how much time they spent on the fundamentals. There was nothing flashy or impressive, just a focused intensity in the players performing their daily routines and doing them extremely well. There was no changing of the drills to make it more exciting or make everybody happy. It was just clear what was important, sticking to the fundamentals. And I love what Daniel Coyle says in his book, The Talent Code. It's about mastering the mundane. The fundamentals aren't flashy. They don't get the most likes on YouTube or Facebook. It's usually the circus tricks that get that. But the great coach knows that the fundamentals are what matters most. And it's in these where the bigger rewards lie. Finally, I want to leave you with 3 reasons why the fundamentals work. First, they focus on what really matters. Second, they break things down and make it easier to learn. And third, they keep it simple and are essential in creating mastery. As Coach Wooden puts it so well, learn the fundamentals, master the fundamentals, teach the fundamentals, and apply the fundamentals. Well, coaches, that's all for me for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. To connect with me, get over to my Twitter, at Alistair McCaw. You can also find my book, 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach, on Amazon.com. I look forward to bringing you the next chapter in our next episode, and that will be Chapter 7, which is my favorite, investing in yourself. Until then, I'm now Alistair McCall, wishing you greatness today.
All right, now it's time for the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach segment, and today I have on Brian Bradley from Egoscue, and I first got to see Brian at the World Golf Fitness Summit. I think it was 8 years ago. We're about to go in October down in New Orleans. He's going to be speaking there again. So, Brian, thanks for coming on today.
Coach, thanks a lot. I appreciate the time.
Looking forward to this. I remember, I hadn't heard of you at the time. This is 8 or 10 years ago. I forget. I know the World Golf Fitness Summit is 10 years old now, but I'm pretty sure it was 8 years ago. I saw you do a lecture and a practical. It was just kind of blew me away. I really enjoyed not only your speaking style, but or your information, but the whole product. It was had fun in there. Learned a lot. Give us just the background though. What is Egoscue?
Okay, Egoscue is basically just posture, pain, performance, and I can't stress enough the first P out of those three. We teach a course called P3 that we started about 18 years ago, posture, pain, performance, and everybody would come in and they're, okay, I'm here for the performance end, or my back hurts. So we know those are the drivers. That should be the subtitle. And above that is posture. And I know that 25 years ago when I started doing this, back in 91, people would say to me, well, posture doesn't sell. What are you guys doing? You're looking at, no, that doesn't make sense. You can't get faster. You can't get stronger just by changing thoracic spine curvature. And Pete Egoscue, over time, put together the belief system using all kinds of modalities. He'll flat out tell you instinctively is how he built his business, fixing himself coming out of Vietnam, fixing his friends, retiring from the Marine Corps with a political science degree, and looking at it from the standpoint of the body's connected as a unit. And I won't sing that song. You don't want to hear me sing. So the idea behind Egoscue is that it's looking at the ankle, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, the position of the head, whether it's tilted to one side, rotated to another direction, or head forward. All of those, front view, side view, rear view, superior view to see rotation, all of those are basically looking at how the body's functioning from point A to point B. Is it as efficient as possible? Then apply any type of movement after that. We have a saying that says there's no such thing as bad movement, meaning a person who squats with a bar behind their neck, or there's certifying agencies that are saying no more behind the neck press down or press ups and then pull downs. Well, that's just crazy to me because 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, they were totally fine on a generation of people that were more posturally sound because we used to climb trees and run and jump and hop instead of just being stuck on electronics. So I understand where their limitations in their belief system of how the body should work is coming from. But Egoscue's belief is get the body to align itself and everything becomes efficient at that point.
Great stuff. Actually, I just got done last weekend with functional range conditioning. Not sure if you're familiar with it, but a very similar message, different avenues to go about it, but a message about, like they like to say, make joints nice. And, I don't care what you do after that. You should be able to do anything. And I think that's really what you guys are saying. So let's talk about posture. Let's go into it a little deeper. I think for a lot of people blow it off. It seems like there's no gray area. People either think posture is so important, or they just say, okay, we've blown it out of proportion. Obviously, you guys think posture is really important. And I want to talk to you about, though, what are we looking at? I mean, I feel like we see we people who look at posture, and then we're seeing the same thing almost on everybody at this point. Everybody's seems to have a forward head posture, or a little bit of thoracic spine, extra thoracic spine curvature. And I think we're all trying to fix this with strength and conditioning, and it seems like it can't be fixed. Can you talk to us right now about when you're looking at posture? And I want to say before I get into this, I was watching your web series on egoscue.com and about one of the guys that you helped fix. And it's, I think,
The producer.
yeah.
Yeah, the producer.
Yeah, really. I mean, I only saw 4 or 5 of them, but I'm definitely going to finish it because it was really interesting to see this whole process. And it wasn't like you were giving him a million things to do. So that's what I loved about it. But talk to us about, because this is the first thing you did with him. You looked at his posture. What are you looking for posture? In posture.
Well, good. Yeah, that series was called Becoming Pain Free. And the guy, Steven, on there was a movie producer out of LA and with chronic upper extremity symptoms, whether it was paresthesia or actual nerve pain. And he had a 5-year-old kid that he was trying to pick up and all that stuff. And that was my leverage point. I said, look, you can be as successful as you want in your life or not. But if you choose to be, it's not going to happen for very long because you're going to be out of this business because you're such a perfectionist. You want to control the cameras. You want to be able to control the set. He said, yeah, I can't move anymore. And the guy's way younger than me. I mean, I'm 1 year away from 50. He's so much younger. And I use that as leverage too, saying, look what I can do because of cumulative effect with Egoscue. And basically looking at his posture, and you said a statement where you said, okay, I don't know if posture can be fixed through strength and conditioning. I can't say I agree or disagree because there might be somebody out there in the strength and conditioning world who might have some great information from us. But when Pete Egoscue spearheaded this whole posture movement back in 1971 and then in 81, we looked at these as decades, 91, 2001. We were on a mission since 2001 to change the way people looked at the human body. It's not that difficult. I will tell you flat out, if you're trying to assess the body too much, you're making a huge mistake, which is why I like what Gray Cook's done. Because he's saying, look, these 7 movement patterns, if you fail these, you're an accident waiting to happen. I think it's genius. I don't even know a huge amount about the 7 movement patterns. He and I just work together on other things, but we're looking at it saying he simplified it to 7 moves. Okay, well, it's like 7-minute abs versus 6-minute abs. Which one works? But ideally, looking at someone's posture like we did with Steven and saying take a walk and seeing a medial femur at heel strike, mid stance, on one side, maybe not on the other, tells me that there's some type of hip disparity going on. So if there's one thing, if somebody turned off this podcast right after this because they're getting a headache from listening to me, don't turn it off until you hear this. A hip disparity, one side functioning different from the other, the actual femur head rotating in the hip joint, the pelvis, the acetabulum, if that relationship is compromised in any way, there's an absolute compensation up and down the chain. Specifically, in the thoracic spine begins a segmental change at each vertebrae, the muscular system, the scap position, the glenohumeral joint functioning, the clavicle rotates differently. And then, as you and I were talking earlier, the head tilt or rotates to one side, even 5 degrees. And then the jaw offsets. So then they go in and see their upper cervical chiropractor and says, whoa, C1, C2 is out. They make that adjustment and the person feels better. But if we don't get to the base of the whip and get that pelvic disparity to fix itself, to bring it back to some neutral relationship between the femur head and the acetabulum, then you're always going to be chasing the tail. Even though the person may feel better, from a functional, mechanical standpoint, we'll put them on a bar and wonder, why does that pelvis keep shifting laterally like it does in their golf swing? Or when they throw, that elbow stress is 5 times higher than it should be, and we're going to end up with Tommy John in a year again. So we've got to start thinking very simply, if the pelvis is out, the thoracic spine will compensate, the femur will rotate differently, which causes the tibia, the fibula, the ankle joint, the top and bottom side, everything in the foot changes. Which is why I think when we looked at this years ago and said, we've got to, if we're going to spearhead this and be the elephant in the room as it relates to posture only, we are not the strength and conditioning world. If we are posture people and we're going to spearhead this movement and change the minds of people, we've got to make this as simple as possible. Not that they weren't smart enough to get it, but we're talking to the consumer, not just the strength and conditioning coach or the personal trainer or the PT or the OT or whatever. We're talking to Joe Schmo, who lives in Missouri, who is an accountant whose neck hurts and wonders why he's done 5 years of treatment, $95,000 in treatment, and his arm is still numb after 3 hours sitting at the computer. When all we have to do is stand him pigeon-toed, tighten up his quads, and all of a sudden his jaw resets after 2 minutes of holding that. And I know that sounds far-fetched, but I was teaching this huge course down in Marco Island for Tony Robbins this last weekend. I'm a facilitator with them. And I was watching, this lady comes up and she's probably 28, 30 years old. She said, look, I was a college lacrosse player and I'm having shoulder joint surgery in 2 weeks. Can you help me with this? Is it permanent? And you looked at her humerus and it was completely internally rotated to where the crease of the elbow was almost against the ribs. And I said, well, guys, I'm assuming by looking at her, and I had about 50 people around me because we were just educating some people. This was out by the booth. I said, let's just assume she's right. Objective findings in her shoulder are real. We don't know that, but let's just assume she's right. I validated that belief system, which helps the customer trust me more. Secondly, then I say, I want to do something completely off the spectrum. I want to go completely away from your shoulder and let's just see. So it's my functional movement test. I want you to put your toes together, kick your heels out to 45 degrees, like literally pigeon-toed, standing pigeon-toed. Keep the weight on the inside of your big toe. Don't let them roll out to the ankle sprain position. That's how I talk to her because you can't use, inversion, eversion. She's not going to get it. Tighten up the quads, and I hit her in the leg. Come on, tighten them up. You're a player. Let's go. Super thick quads. And finally she goes, oh, you want my quads tight? And I'm like, yeah, I said it 7 times. But they don't get it at first because they've never had their femur in that position. So the body kinesthetically can't fire it. So she's standing pigeon-toed, quads tight, which all of a sudden brings her to an anterior pelvic tilt. More than what she had before. Maybe more than what the PT world's going to be happy with. But I'm not going to ask this girl to walk pigeon-toed. I'm just taking her there. So now I see there's a pelvic tilt change. There's a segmental lumbar vertebrae change, which I know at that point, and I trust, if I keep you here long enough, that's going to trickle up into the mid-thoracic, then the upper thoracic, and then the cervical, and out through the scapula. So I had a bunch of OTs and nurses and all these different people there that were trying to better their lives through Tony Robbins and all the stuff he does, which, by the way, is pretty amazing. I've been working with him for 21 years. And all of a sudden, the lady says to me, can I interrupt? I said, yes. She goes, her shoulder's dropping. And I said, yeah, I know. And I'm looking at her from the side view because I have faith that they're going to tell me that something's changing. And they're like, that's remarkable. And I said, well, let's stay another minute and see if we can get it to be level. I said, and I looked at her and I said, remember, these people are not working for me. They're unbiased. So it's not that you don't have objective findings that are damaging your shoulder, that the doc might have to go in and clean out bone spurs and formations and things like that. But I believe you can solve this problem possibly without surgical intervention, or at least accompany the surgical intervention with something that cures the actual reason why you formed that bone spur at the acromion. So all of a sudden, about a minute later, she's starting to sweat a little bit. And the lady says, your arm is so much more level right now. And I said, okay, come out of this, stand there. And I looked at her shoulder. I go, they're much more level. She goes, yeah, I feel that. I said, well, now test it. Move your arm around. She took her arm right over her head, which she couldn't do before. She starts to tear up. And I said, look, this isn't Jesus with the lepers. I go, don't get crazy on me here. I said, I need you to understand. I have a sick sense of humor. I'm sorry. And I apologize to your religious people in the crowd. But I had to get her to understand. You did this. You, the customer, organically changed the base of the bullwhip, and the head and the shoulders are the tip of the whip. Just like throwing a baseball. You don't create that speed from the hand, shoulder, elbow, mid-back. It comes from the generation of the rotational mechanism and flexion of the spine centered at the hip. And she said, that's amazing to me. And I said, all right, I'm going to send you an exercise routine that's going to change this around. That'll be your first step into getting well. And I said, here's another thing you need to change. Quit looking at your shoulder and getting pissed off about it and wishing you never played college lacrosse. College years are some of the best years of our lives. You have a negative connotation, something tied to that. She said, yes. And I said, change your mind right now. You had a blast in college. You met some forever lasting friends, and you had the opportunity to get it paid for. Unfortunately, your shoulder blew out because you hit the ground wrong. And she said, you're right. I said, that's an opportunity for you. It created this opportunity right now for you to get as functional as possible before the age of 30, before you start having kids down the road and you have to have scheduled C-sections because your pelvis doesn't work. This is creating a more functional body. So this injury led you to talk to me, led us into a more functional routine. Are we clear? And that's how I speak to them, because you have to come at them with so much certainty that you're almost scaring them into believing that you know your shit. So they have to come out of it saying, wow, okay, this guy has so much certainty. I'm just going to try this. That's all I'm asking. Just get it done once or twice, then trust the results. So I know that was literally the longest answer to your question, known to man, but hopefully I covered it.
Well, just to clarify for people too, is you're not saying, hey, come to me, see me once. Like that's what the Jesus comment was. You're not coming to see me once and then, wow, she's cured. Because again, we've seen things happen from like a great cook or whatever, and change somebody. They makes them touch their toes. Obviously, then they go back tomorrow and they can't touch their toes again. Obviously, this is something that's going to be over time. What are some of the things? And I'm going to go back to how you look at posture in a second, but just go on to what are some of the things that you're going to try to change and have her do over the next month, for example?
Well, she will do the menu that I send her first, and menu of exercises, which may, and look, the humans have an attention span of about 5 seconds. So I will give her 3, 4, 5 things very simply and say, here are the expected changes. Now they'll come out to you and say, I'll do whatever it takes to get out of this symptom, because that's what they're driven with right now. The mistake is we think we're so cool in this fitness, strength, wellness, rehab world that we start piling things on top of them, not realizing that the minute they feel better, they quit doing it. So we've got to keep it short, sweet, to the point, which is why over time we've created exercises that can hit 7 places at once. Just by repositioning this, we assume, and we know off of what we've seen, that the rotation will come out. So we give her 4 or 5 things, then follow it up with some poignant questions, which one of them is never, how does it feel now? Because if she took herself from a level 10 pain in her shoulder to a level 2, what's her answer if I say, how do you feel?
Feeling great.
No, I feel the same.
Oh, okay.
Because the pain is still there, but yet it's a level 2. They don't realize the change in intensity is a big deal to us. So I say to her, whoa, let me ask a better question. What has changed about your symptom in your shoulder? Oh my God, it feels so much better. I was a 10 before, now it's a 2.
Yeah.
Then I go into the education standpoint, because remember, they're thinking what the Pete Egoscue's book is, which is titled Pain Free. They're thinking, I want to be pain free. He's asking me how I feel. I feel the same. I'm not pain free. I have to get them to focus a little bit differently. Yes, your ultimate goal is pain free, perform at a higher level, finally throw a pitch that's 98 miles an hour with no elbow pain. But we're going to take a little bit of time to get there. So to answer your question, there are progressions that we have to look at through our next evaluation. And you'll see that on the Becoming Pain Free series, that I would do the same evaluation every week, literally the same evaluation, because that adds some validity to, I'm testing him over a protocol saying, how's his body adjusting to the hang test, the 1 foot stork test, what ankle strategy is he using, blah, 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 asking him questions. What's it feel like when you walk? And then more importantly, how's it going in your private life, at home? How do you feel? All that stuff. And through all of these questions, we lead ourselves through this 8-step process, which, listen, we put a lot of science behind Egoscue, which means we put none. Remember, Pete Egoscue's degree is in political science and had 0 anatomy and physiology training. The whole thing was based on taking Stephen through a process that over time his body would organically change, and he would dictate to me, the person listening, for different cues to come into the conversation. And I always tell people, you're in charge of the conversation if you're the one asking questions, not answering and sitting there pontificating.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there saying to him, just put the time into each one of these weeks. And over this 8-step process, you're going to get well. The same thing with her. I'm going to get her to lie on her back the next week, which I couldn't do on the first day I worked with her. Using the floor as a happy medium to create a ground reaction force against her thoracic spine that she cannot escape from. And you being the strength coach guy, about 20 some years ago, I was on stage with Pete Egoscue, and one of the major older strength guys, but been around forever, out of Florida, said, you guys are the people that think that lying on your back is going to make you bigger, faster, stronger. And Pete looked at me and said, do you want to answer that one? And I said, I'll take it. Yeah, absolutely. And I said, we are absolutely those people. I didn't do a good enough job in explaining why, but I'll do that now. When you change the thoracic spine curvature on a pelvically driven change, not let them lay on a physio ball and change the thoracic spine temporarily. I'm talking a more permanent change, eventually a permanent spinal curve change. You have unleashed a completely different athlete. Completely different. So if you want to get correct arm swing in a track runner to get them to go faster, to create correct arm swing, to get the legs to catch up, you better change the mechanism that controls the scapula, which is the position of the thoracic spine in relation to the lumbar, in relation to the pelvic girdle change. So all of these tie into how this lady felt better with her shoulder initially, and long term she'll solve this problem by going through a process, which is why I ask you, if I just gave her one menu, would she be better? Yes. Would she be completely fixed? Or I don't think she would. I think that what would happen is she would kind of plateau, which is why we make these changes. And it does give me more opportunity to educate her down the road until she's not broken and she's not permanent.
Yeah. But, I think one thing is, a lot of times the thought process with the strength conditioning coach, that's why I want you to go a little deeper into what you're not doing external rotation with a band on her, and you're not doing, you're not just saying go and do some suspension rows to kind of work the upper back and get the thoracic spine, get those muscles pulling those guys back. So what would you say is the philosophy of kind of some of the exercises you're prescribing if somebody looked and they're seeing, the one, I forget what you call it, the one where you're on your back and your feet are up in a 90-90 position, and you have like some of the wall sits and the standing where you have the slant board, you're standing on that into dorsiflexion and you're getting them back. What would be the philosophy in that? Because it's not changing the strength of the muscles to pull everything back together.
It's assuming that the body already has the strength to do this. It has the strength. It has the ability to facilitate this change. We just have to facilitate the facilitation. So ultimately, can I just give a couple things on YouTube they can go watch? I'll just give you a couple addresses they can search for.
Yeah, that'd be great. And we can have links on Strength Coach Podcast as well.com.
Yeah, perfect. I'm going to give you those. And the first one is Egoscue Anywhere. So it's EGOSCUE Anywhere. You'll see that it's my ugly mug standing in basically it looks like an airplane hangar in London. We shot this years ago at a Tony Robbins UPW where I had one of their platinum partner guys, one of their higher ups come out and say, Brian, we need to know what those exercises you just did on stage because it was unbelievable to change all this. Okay, great. Look, I know it's just simple exercise, but yeah, let's put those up there. There's 4 exercises, the arm circles, the elbow curls, the overhead extension. They're all standing. And then I give them the greatest abdominal exercise ever, which might interest your listeners, the greatest abdominal exercise ever. And once they go see that 4th exercise, and believe me, don't skip the first 3 because the 4th will be 50% less effective if they do. Once they do those exercises, and I suggest they experiment on themselves to teach themselves, they're in the petri dish now. They're doing the experiment on themselves to see what they want to bring to their customer. Those 4 exercises are amazing. If you go to another place on Google and type in Egoscue Tower, TOWER, there's a 7-minute video of me kneeling down with one of my ladies that I work with in the tower. It's 7 minutes of listening to me talk, which again, they might have to take some ibuprofen for the headache, but it's ideally, it's changing the pelvic girdle and lengthening the psoas in a releasing way, not a stretching way. Stretching it to me is useless. Flexibility training, useless, unless you're getting muscles to release their tightness because they're tight for a reason. You got to attack the reason why they're tight, not just try to go after the tightness. And you already know that. You said it at the beginning, and I know your field is completely in believing that. So there's a couple places on there, and you can just follow some of the other videos. The exercise you mentioned in the slant board is called the wall drop, WALLDROP. Just look that up, Egoscue wall drop on Google again or on YouTube. If you can't find it, then I'll give you my contact information, and I'll get people as much information as possible because I'd rather give your listeners something so that they can ultimately get the results they're looking for with so much less effort. It is unbelievable. And by the way, the customer does everything. We do nothing. It's hands off. The customer does their part, and now the car is functioning better and can go around the track faster.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Brad, just go over really quick though, specifically, like I know in that let's talk about 2 things that you saw in the producer, the wide base and the tilting head. What is the wide base telling you?
I call it the old football coach's stance. I'm standing on the sideline. I cross my arms. My feet are 3 feet away from each other, and I'm yelling at the player, got to do this, got to do this. Well, we've all been there. We've all been high school, college athletes, all that kind of stuff. Well, the wide base is basically the pelvic girdle shutting itself down and unloading the lumbar spine from any work, ultimately making us weaker. So we've got to change the spread, not just by bringing the feet in. Brian said, get the feet straight, bring the feet fist width apart at the big toes. No, I tell you to get it that wide only for the exercises. So for example, the arm circles, the elbow curls, the overhead extension on Egoscue Anywhere, the key to that whole thing is getting your feet straight, literally dead straight, slightly pigeon-toed if you ask me, fist width apart at the big toes, and now all of a sudden strengthen him in that position and his legs will never stand that wide again because you facilitated the muscle group around the femur head meeting the acetabulum. We'll call it the hip cuff, adductors, glute medius, everything coming into play, not by working them, but just by changing them and then perturbing the upper body. And all of a sudden they said, my back feels so much better. Like it doesn't have any pain right now. Did we treat his back? No. Did we look at his overall postural dysfunction and just reverse it? Yes, just like the girl standing pigeon-toed and it temporarily adjusts her pelvis and then eventually permanently adjusts her pelvis. So ultimately that wide base is just, in my opinion, a complete sign of, when I say weakness, I don't believe the athlete's weak. I mean on the structural level, their body's just working inefficiently. And if I were seeing him and I was a facilitator for Major League Baseball or football, I would say change the person's postural dysfunction by doing this, then put them through that cone test again, and I guarantee you a different athlete. Which is why the athletes that we've worked with forever, the Dilfers, the Mark Brunells, the John Lynches, all these guys, they played for so long and they don't have all these catastrophic injuries, and they played for 10, 15, 20 years. Unfortunately, one of them, Junior Seau, shot himself, God bless him. But the idea is that these guys adopted a mentality that said, if I want to hit correctly, I've got to change my thoracic spine position. And as it relates to head tilt, let's go into that part of your question. Everybody is concerned about the forward head. Got it. We all are familiar with that. But the lateral tilt, even 5-10 degrees, looking at them from the front view, is basically, it's a game changer once you can get that to center itself. And that doesn't mean weight them on one side and push their head over. The head is tilted for a reason. It's a reaction up and down the spine from the base of the movement, which is the pelvis, which I'm going to say something now, which is probably going to piss a lot of people off or maybe make them happy. The NFL will shut down concussions when they stop focusing on the head and they start focusing on the position of the cervical spine as it relates to the thoracic spine, as it relates to the lumbar, and eventually the pelvis. The spine is a shock absorber. But because these helmets are like freaking battering rams now, and these guys have so much more speed, the idea is that you've got to be able to change the way the thoracic spine can absorb the hit, and the concussion reaction is gone.
So really, we think that, I mean, like you said, these guys are huge. They're much bigger. They're much faster. You feel like that's gonna be the main solution to it?
I promise you, this is a Mike Boyle statement, right? Because Mike always says, in 5 years, something's going to be different. So I'm going to give you a Mike Boyle belief system. In 5 years, I promise you what I'm talking about right now will be the cure to this concussion problem. I promise you that. And if I'm wrong, I'll just add another 5 years and say they're not there yet. Because it's my athletes that I've worked with will flat out tell me, I've gone in for tests, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, and my CTE symptoms are non-existent. And now I wasn't trying to stop them from CTE years ago. And neither were my therapists at Egoscue. Pete Egoscue didn't even know what it was. I mean, he knew that there was head trauma, all that, but it wasn't something we were focused on as a clinic or as a company. It was a result of going after the organic change of the way the spine is loaded. Now, I know every master's and PhD guy out there is going like this. There's absolutely no proof. There's this. Just hear me out. Go back to the 30 on 30. They did a piece on Jim McMahon and his head injuries. Go back and find it again. Bryant Gumbel, maybe that's what it was. I think that's 30 on 30. Maybe I'm just mistaking them. But if you go back and look at that, and the guy does an adjustment to his C1, C2 upper cervical, the Nuka chiropractic, And he said, it's like somebody flushed my head. I could feel the fluid leaving my brain. They did before and after scans of him, and the fluid was gone on the frontal lobe. To me, I filmed that and I use it now. And I said, guys, look, we've been right about this. This guy just happened to prove it, even just if it was just on one guy. You have to understand that the cause of this is not that these guys are bigger, faster, stronger. The equipment is 100 times better. Now, I don't know how old you are, Anthony, but I'm almost 50. I played back in the day when you took a ringer to the head with those crappy helmets that we had back in the 80s, early 80s. You never, ever, ever took that ringer again. You said, I'm not leading with my head again. Yeah. But because the equipment is so good, these guys are doing that. They're not getting the ringer as much, and all of a sudden they're getting these micro concussions. Here's another one for the NFL to chew on. Every time a player leaves the field who just made an interception and ran it back for a touchdown, what happens when they come to the sideline?
They get bombarded by their teammates?
Yes. And how do they physically get bombarded?
Oh, yeah, the head-to-head, right?
Head-to-head. Let's smack them in the side of the helmet. Well, let's just do an example. Let's at the World Golf Fitness Summit, we're not going to have helmets on. Let's you and I pretend that we just caught something. I'm going to come by and I'm going to smack you in the side of the head without your helmet on. How quickly are you and I going to be in a fist fight? Because you're from New York and I'm from the East Coast too, which means about 10 seconds we're throwing blows. But the idea is these guys are getting micro hits to the head for doing something right.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
So stop all the accolades by hitting each other in the head. And I love the sport. I grew up with it. I played rugby for years, all that. I love the sport. But the idea that the head is the problem is absolutely asinine. And it's not even that people don't know it. They know it, and they won't bring it to the surface because they're afraid to tell you what I'm telling you right now. So I do hope this lit some fire under somebody and said, blame Brian for everything. Please do. And then research it, and then come back to us in 5 to 10 years and say, hey, look what I invented, not me. Make it your idea.
Interesting. Definitely. Brian, let's move on to maybe something a little less controversial, the patch. I absolutely love this idea. I think it's one of the coolest things that I think that not enough people know about. Explain to people what the patch is.
The patch is the name came from the tomato patches in Del Mar, California, where the racetracks are. That's where Pete ran his business for years, the first clinic we ever had. And the tomato patches were out back, 6 to 12 inches of soft dirt in these big tomato fields. And we would take people out there and make them jump and climb over these things because they were trying to keep the horses out of the tomato patch. So they put up these wood barriers. And Pete said, look, John Lynch, John Allred, all these different guys in the NFL wanted me to go to the gym before they were in the NFL, when they were in high school, said, why don't you train us in the gym? And Pete said, look, I'm not going to insult the personal training world by walking into the gym because I don't know what I'm doing. He literally said that to himself. He said, well, why don't I just go to what I know, which is Marine Corps basic training? And back in the mid to late 80s, early 80s, he said, okay, here we go. We're going to start jumping, climbing, hopping, crawling, balancing on convex surfaces. He wasn't saying, look at the ankle strategy, look at the knee strategy, look at the hip strategy. He just wasn't that smart. He'll tell you that. But what he was very good at was the 20%. We talked about 80-20 before. The 20% of what he was really good at was taking people through gross motor movements, not knowing that it was full body. He just said, I'm going to take them through what I did. And the patch obstacle course, patchfitness.com, is basically about taking people through and over an environment through 360 degrees of unloaded movement, meaning nothing in your hands. And I know many of your listeners out there know Michel Dalcourt. He invented the Vipers, VIPR. Unbelievable piece of equipment. And Michel and I were sitting down a couple years ago and we talked about 360-degree loaded movement. He basically created that mindset. And I'm telling you, the guy is a genius. Because what he's done is he's created something for people to whip around, throw, slam, all this other stuff from what he was doing with hockey players when he would roll up carpets for them to train with. Then came the rubber Vipers. Well, the patch is the unloaded 360 movement brother to something like that that's loaded. So you're now manipulating yourself around an environment. Well, why does that sound familiar to all your customers? Because the last time they climbed a tree, it was the same thing that the patch fitness mindset goes through. You manipulated yourself around an environment. Climb the tree, find a way back down. Climb over that fence, climb back over using the other leg next time. And, we're going to get some good footage at the World Golf and all this kind of stuff. We're presenting on that. Lance Gill and I are presenting on it, relating it strictly to golf. And here's another promise. I'm telling you the research is coming, not from me, but from these golf fitness guys who are going to start taking measurements on film and ball speed and distance. I can put them through 5 pillar exercises on the patch. And I promise you, this is a promise again, and it will deliver, that they're going to start seeing distance changes by 10, 20, 30%. And all the person did was re-engage the relationship at the femur head to the acetabulum, and then the rest of the body falls out from there. I hate to make it sound so simple, but I'm telling you right now, when Pete Egoscue created this mindset, it was, I need it to be simple because I do have a political science degree and I'm a Marine Corps major. There are guys out there with PhDs in exercise science, movement mechanics at that point, who would blow him away in what was happening, contralateral, ipsilateral, all that stuff. But it didn't matter to him. He looked at the overall body movement when he created Patch Fitness, which really wasn't Patch Fitness at the point. We helped him create that, but it was the patch. And we named it the tomato patch to say where it came from. And there's enough videos online. You can just type in Egoscue patch or just contact me. I'll send you some new videos. Get on my Twitter and Instagram feed. And I hate to say that kind of stuff because I don't want people just to come in, oh, he's just promoting himself. That's not it at all. I'm giving away the information because I need people like you and your listeners who are the experts in the field, not I, who are the experts in the field, to experience this and then really bring themselves to a point where they can make their lives easier by training their athletes this way.
Absolutely. One question on that, though, is they kind of have to go through, like we talked about before, making the joints nice before they start getting on something like this. Because basically, aren't we just reinforcing bad, movement patterns if we just get on it and start using it?
Great question, because I've always had therapists in our clinics who said, I'm such a believer in the patch, I think we can get away with the therapy on the patch, not send them through therapy. I think that's incorrect for one reason. It's the wrong customer base. If I'm a strength coach at Southwest Louisiana State or something like that, okay, some powerhouse school in their division, or America's team, Penn State University, if I'm somewhere like that and I say, look, I want to take my people through the patch and this guy's had ankle symptoms, or Virginia basketball, I've had this. I'm not dealing with the customer who's in chronic pain who can't move when I'm looking at the patch. I'm dealing with a customer who wants to get bigger, faster, stronger, more efficient, moving laterally or rotating. So for example, this is another thing your listeners can do. And this may take some teaching. I'll shoot a video or something later and put it on the web because it's not rocket science, but I'm sure they can do it themselves. Get down in the bent knee, downward dog position. So get on your hands and knees like a cat and dog. Dorsiflex, tuck your toes under, bring your knees up off the ground in not the straight-legged downward dog, the bent knee downward dog, which means you're pulling your hips back towards your ankles, but your hips are going up in the air also, a slight anterior tilt of the pelvis. Your shoulder flexion is almost a straight line from your wrist to your elbow to your shoulder to your mid-back to your hip. So there's almost a straight line, which most of us who downward dog with straight legs, we can't get there anyway because we're so tight they round over their mid-back. So let's bend the knees, take away the limitation, and now let's move in the direction that we never go. The general public doesn't move laterally. Bear crawl, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards laterally. And I don't mean hop, 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 hop for speed. I'm talking deliberately reach your right leg out to about 30 degrees. Reach it out, let your hands catch up. Reach it out, let your hands catch up. Literally the speed that I'm talking. Reach it out, let your hands catch up. Reach it out. So that's speed. Think of it as more therapeutic rather than strength and conditioning or speed. Person's now walking in that, and now they turn around and walk back to the left because you got to do both sides. The customer will stand up, pick up a golf club, and all of a sudden swing differently. Now, why is that? Because they've changed the way the leg bone relates to the pelvic girdle. And they've changed it in a position that they're not compensatedly cheating in their thoracic spine, by staying in flexion and rounding their shoulders over. We've trapped the body in a new position and then worked it there. So the patch line of thinking, these bear crawls, which everybody and their mother does. I told Pete Egoscue years ago, I said, look, we created the boot camp idea based on your stuff with these guys. Then we went away from it for a while because I literally had therapists who were substituting therapy for the patch and hurting people. So we just shut it off. That's it. The patch is going away. For about 5 to 6 years. We came back and everybody and their mother was doing boot camps. So then we had to delve back into this and going, guys, we got to correct some of this, because all they're doing is pushing people to a level where they think they can push them so hard they're going to make them puke. The high intensity stuff is going to make them throw up. Anybody can make you throw up, but can you do it in a functional way that now increases their ability to move as an athlete on the field? So to answer your question, you do need to do the therapy first, but I think it's looking at the population differently. The patch population is not my therapy in pain clientele. They're two completely different populations. Do I take my patch people, do I take my therapy people eventually to the patch line of thinking? Yes. Do I take my patch people and give them some ideas as it relates to therapy? Yes, there's a huge crossover. But I don't really know if you have to do the therapy first before doing the patch if you're dealing with a customer who's coming in for the patch. A 15-year-old soccer player who wants to get bigger, faster, stronger, you have them lay down on their back and put their legs up over a chair, they're going to go, what am I doing here? You're not helping them on the psychological end. So I would take them and make them a little bit more active, get them to believe in what we're doing first, get them to feel it, and then I'll slowly trickle in some of the therapy stuff and vice versa.
Absolutely. I think for me, what I think the value, another added value of the patch would be is I just have this idea, and my listeners know, they've heard me say this before, about I have a bunch of seniors. And I just feel like, I'm always trying to get them back to the playground idea, right? Like, how do we get some of those ideas? Like you said, the kind of, jumping and skipping and hopping and pulling and pushing and the monkey bars, etc. I just think that we need to go back with with the way we developed in that, from that respect, from that playground idea, and it's something that I try to do with a lot of my people, and I think the patches would be like an excellent way to do that.
Well, you're right. And that's where, the junior performance centers and stuff with TPI, I got to applaud Greg and Dave, because they, we've been dealing with golf forever because of Jack Nicklaus and Player, Trevino, Palmer, all these guys that we worked with 20, 30 years ago. They spearheaded this fitness stuff. Nicklaus having a back injury, Pete works with him, and all of a sudden he shoots 64 the next day at Riviera, the British Open, all this kind of stuff. That's where all of this kind of stuff started. But I will tell you what Greg and Dave did at TPI, and I'm not just here to promote TPI, but I really like what these guys did. I really support them because they literally took a belief system and ran with it. And when you hear what they're creating in the future, it's unbelievable. And it's not just in the United States. These guys are global as it relates to what they're creating. And that's fun for me to see because, the advisory board with TPI and all these, what we've done is we've helped the whole situation, because these guys brought great minds into thinking, and they just facilitated the thought process as a group of guys who were collectively thinking together. And they've brought this to a mindset, which is, let's bring fitness to the golf world so that we can sell more golf balls. I know that's what Titleist wants to do, but ideally these guys have a bigger issue. They want to bring this to the junior level at a level that's unprecedented. And because they all have kids, just like I have kids, and I'm sure, I don't know whether you have kids or not, but when you have kids, you start looking at the world from a different perspective, because you start thinking the future. I see what my kids' friends are like. Man, I really have to help it. When my kid's birthday was last night, one of the girls sitting at the table orders breadsticks for dinner. And she's going to be a D1 soccer player. Man. And I looked at her and I'm like, I'm sorry, you're having breadsticks? And she said, yeah. And well, what'd you have for lunch? Well, no, I'm full. I had a cafe latte or something before this. I almost came out of my skin. I'm going first, and I literally started saying, I go, you're a D1 prospect. You've already been looked at 13, 14 years old. You're having sugar compounded with more sugar, and then tonight you're going to have more sugar? I go, you know what? Put that down. I want you to have a chicken wing soaked in blue cheese. That's healthier than what you're eating right now. And she's like, ooh, no, I'll get fat. And I said, well, you keep eating that way, that belief system is going to come true. But that's the mindset that's out there. And we need people the people listening to your podcast, thousands of people out there, to literally not be nice about this, because this country's falling so far behind physically. And I know the Olympics didn't show that, but we have more people than most of the world put together in this country. But when you really look at it, our youth is dying before they're living. And we have an obligation to them to not be nice about it. Think of how Gray Cook would look at this. I mean, he's 6'2", 6'3". I mean, he's a big hillbilly from the West Virginia area. He'll tell you that. I don't remember which state it was, so I apologize to him. But looking at this, he'll tell you, I'm just a redneck who likes to canoe. Yeah, he believes in overall growing up in the wild, letting his family move, letting them climb trees, experience stuff like that. But that's not happening to our youth. They're focusing on one sport and then going to find a strength coach. And if this strength coach doesn't become their outdoor environment, then they're only making this kind of stuff worse, which I'm telling you, just adopt 20% of the Patch Fitness idea, and you're now bringing the outdoors indoors with these kids. I promise them that.
Great stuff, Bri. You were right. You can talk. I think I only asked 2 questions, but this has been great. You guys are doing such amazing work, and I've been a fan for so long. It's great to finally get you on the show. So we're going to have a bunch of links to all your stuff. So thanks so much for coming on and giving us 45 minutes, imparting some great knowledge on us.
Well, I'm going to catch up to you in October down at the summit. And if your people have any specific questions, we'll get the links to them. But if they want to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, it's The Movement Nerd on Twitter and The Movement Nerd 50 on Instagram, because I had to put my age in there just so they know that, we're not full of it. You can move at this age. And we do answer messages. It comes directly to me or to another guy. Then he brings the messages directly to me. We'd love the answers. I'd love the arguments. And I do really appreciate what you're doing. Honestly, Anthony, you're going to be one of these guys in the next 10 years that's going to explode to even higher levels than where you are now. And if there's anything I can do to help you guys with that, please don't hesitate.
Thanks so much, Bri. All right, that's going to do it for episode 194 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Special thanks to Chris Pryor, Aaron McGurr, and the folks over at Perform Better. You can check them out at performbetter.com for all their products and info on their educational seminars. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Brian Bradley for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning, nutrition, and performance enhancement. Rachel Cosgrove for the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. Check them out at resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Alistair McCall from the McCallmethod.com. Diane Vives and Functional Movement Systems. Check them out at functionalmovement.com. And of course, remember you can join strengthcoach.com and have access to the site for just $1, 3 days, just $1. After the 3 days, if you don't love the site, simply cancel your membership. You don't pay another penny. If you love all the articles, videos, audio interviews, including webinars and the best forum on the net, you'll automatically become a member of the site for the lowest price of $14.95 a month. You can also join for a year and save a lot more money, another $30 at $129. Once your 3-day trial is over and you become a member, you'll be able to download Coach Boyle's 2 books, Designing Strength Training Programs and Facilities, as well as Advances in Functional Training. And remember, if you have a staff of 2 or more, you want to sign up as a group, you have a special membership offer for you up to 50% off. To access that offer, go to strengthcoach.com, click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. My name's Anthony Renna, and you can reach me at strengthcoachpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.